All right, so let's talk about the requirements for the final project. Again, you're meant to be in a team of between one, your own, or up to 4 people. I prefer the smaller team sizes. Bigger ones always historically there's always someone who has slacking or somebody who's letting everybody else do the work, and you often have complaints towards the end of the semester saying, oh, well, we worked more than he did or whatever. And I like to avoid that as much as possible. Right? It's a drama I could do without. I think a right size team is 2 to 3. Regardless of the size of the team, the same requirements. Right? So we're not going to scale back on whether it's just 1 of you or 4 of you. That makes it way too hard to have an equitable grading scheme. So the idea is that you're going to come up with 2 human users that are going to have distinct use cases. Data models, database designs are always based on the use cases, right, of who is your audience, and what are they trying to accomplish, and the set of requirements that go along with those use cases. Right? And that's going to drive the design of your data set, right? All the constraints, all the validation, all the one-to-manys, many-to-manys, all the structure of your data is going to be driven by these set of use cases. These human roles need to have at least one use case that is specific to that one role. Right? They might share other use cases amongst themselves, but they have to have at least one use case that's specific to one use case, to one human actor, that the other role cannot do that particular use case. So they're distinct. Plus, you need to have an admin kind of role that can this kind of like a super user that can edit all sorts of pieces of data and information for your project. They can manage other users, can create users, remove users, update something about those users. You also need to come up with at least 2 domain objects. Domain objects are concepts that are specific to your domain. Right? So humans are across any domain, right? Any domain will have humans, obviously. But then you'll have some pieces of data that is only specific to that domain that you choose, right? Whether it's healthcare or finances or entertainment or telecommunications, whatever domain you choose, there will be things that you need to store in the database, right? That are specific to your domain, right? If it's healthcare, well, there'll be records for each one of the patients, right? So there might be a patient role, and there might be records for that patient. So the record, right, or records, right, is a domain object that is somehow associated to a patient. So the record is that you're keeping, or medical records you're keeping track, is a domain object. You need 2 of them. So if it's some of them might be collections of others, right? Where if it's songs, you might have a playlist that allows you to organize many songs. Right? So a song is a domain object that is specific to the domain of songs or entertainment, and then a playlist is also a domain object that is specific to that domain. Yes. Right, so 2 human users with specific use cases, and then 2 domain objects, whatever they are. Plus, you'll have all sorts of other things you need to model that create relationships between users and domain objects to domain objects. Create relationships between the 2. You might have between users. You might have a user is following some other user, or somebody is somebody else's manager, right? Or so that's a relationship between users. You need to have also relationships between users and the domain objects. Somebody might be assigned to a project. A project is a domain object, and then a person might be assigned to many projects. Right? So you need to have that relationship between users and domains. Also between domains, a domain and another domain object. So 2 human roles with a specific domain, specific use cases. One admin role. In addition to the 2 human roles, and this admin role needs to be able to have all sorts of CRUD, to create, read, update, delete operations on all sorts of things. It needs to be able to have CRUD operations on all types of users, right? So you need to be able to create, update, delete users, update a user's role and update at least one other field. Okay, whether it's email or whether it's a date of birth, whatever, at least one other field. So you need to be able to update at least a role in at least one other field. You also need to be able to update all types of domain objects, or at least 2 domain objects. So you need to be able to create, update, delete a domain object, and also update at least one field of a domain object. Okay? You need to also CRUD operations on at least one user-to-user relationship. So if somebody's following somebody, you need to be able to say, well, you're not following that anymore, right? So, or you can create a following, or somebody else's manager, or whatever user-to-user relationship. Same thing with a relationship between the user and the domain object, right? If you like a song, or you have a set of bookmarks or a set of projects that you are related to, you should be able to update that relationship between a user and a domain object. If you have also at least one domain-to-domain object relationship, if you have a playlist that contains many songs, right? So that's a relationship between a domain object and another domain object. You need to be able to CRUD that relationship. Okay? So that's from the admin's point of view. I would get started with the admin's requirements, right? Because usually, if you implement the admin use cases, the end users use cases are typically a subset of the admin role, because the admin role can do everything. It's a super user, right? It's God. As opposed to a particular person who has a specific role will only really have a subset of everything that is possible that can possibly be done. Yes. So if the admin can create quizzes and answer questions and can do basically everything, right? Well, faculty can create and update quizzes, but a student can take the quiz. Right? Those are subsets of CRUDing a quiz. Yes. So I would get started with the admin role, and that would allow you to model everything. And then you have two end users. Again, these are real users using the real system. You need 2 of them, right? So it might be maybe a faculty and a student. It might be a buyer and a seller. It might be a doctor and a patient. It might be whatever. It might be somebody investing in their stock market, and somebody might be giving them guidance on their investment. Required data model. So you need to be able to model all types of users, all different types of users. So again, you need at least 2. You need to be able to model the domain object. You need to model a user-to-user relationship, whether I'm somebody's manager, I am somebody's financial advisor, or I sent you a message, or I'm following you, whatever the relationship is between one user and another user. You also need to model a relationship between a user and a domain object. Again, I like this song, this is my playlist, whatever that relationship is. You need to model the relationship between a domain and a domain. Also a one-to-one relationship, right? Like in the example we might have a permit, or I won this particular award. Also, you need to have at least one-to-many relationship. At least one-to-many, right? A many-to-many does not count as 2 one-to-manys, right? A many-to-many does not count as 2 one-to-manys. Although, obviously, that's how you implement it, right? But it doesn't count. You have to have a specific one-to-many relationship. You have to have at least one many-to-many relationship. And again, these does not count as 2 one-to-manys. You need to have some kind of self-reference, meaning somewhat of a recursive relationship where you have a table that has a foreign key that points to the primary key of the same table. Okay, let's call it self-reference, meaning, again, a foreign key in a record that points to its primary key of the same table. This allows you to create all sorts of hierarchical structures. Right? Maybe you have a product that belongs to a category, and you could have a root category, and then subcategories and sub-subcategories, right? So these hierarchies you can implement in using these self-references. Also, in a diagram chart, a chart that captures the structure of employees, right? Who reports to who? You might have a manager, and you have employees of that manager who have their own employees, who have their own employees. And you have at the root, you might have the CEO who doesn't, well, against they report to the board. But nevertheless, right? You have a hierarchy of saying, well, who's my manager? And you point up, and then that other person might have another manager. You go all the way up to the top, who doesn't point to anybody. Right? It's at the top of the food chain. So self-reference, at least one self-reference. I don't care if it's at the domain model, at the domain object, or it's at the user, right? Wherever you want to put it. At least one generalization. Generalization is inheritance, right? Where you have a parent-child relationship, where you have a base class and you have subclasses that inherit from the top one. Right? It could be a person and faculty and students inheriting from faculty. It could be in the user side, or it could be in the domain object side. It doesn't matter where you put it. At least one generalization. At least one enumeration. Enumeration is keeping track of all the valid values that a particular field might take, right? So I might keep track of what are the genres for the movies. So you might have drama, horror, sci-fi. So those are enumerated data types. Okay? And the requirement is to implement it in what's called a you can implement it with plain old SQL, right? That you're not using the feature of any one particular vendor. Like MySQL allows you to declare a field as type enumeration, right? Don't use that, right? Because vendors will have specific ways of implementing these enumerations, right? What we want to do is instead implement it in such a way that can be implemented in any vendor, right? And for that, you need a specific table that has all the valid values as primary keys, and then everybody else who wants an enumerated data type then points to it. We'll see in a minute how to implement that. So at least one enumeration, at least one aggregation. An aggregation, as we'll see in a minute, is a relationship between two objects if you remove one, it does not cascade to somewhere else, right? There's no cascade delete, right? That if you remove a parent, it does not cascade to the children, okay? Whereas a composition, it does. A composition is the parts make up the whole, right? And if you don't have the whole, well, you can't have the parts either. Right? If you remove a parent, right, all the children go with it. So at least one composition. Anyway, so that's the data requirements. For the user interface, again, there's use whatever technology you feel comfortable with, and I'm going to give a really brief example on how to do this with really simple React. Maybe halfway through the course, it'll be an example on how you might want to go about that. But there is no requirement on what is it that you end up doing. Right? If we're doing a desktop application using Java Swing, that's right. We prefer using VB or C# or some folks also get like 20% folks want to do like a mobile application. Right? That's fine. If you feel comfortable and you've done this in other courses, that's totally okay. Or if you prefer doing a web, then that's fine. Now for the look and feel, it needs to look polished. It should look finished, right? But it doesn't have to be spectacular like you would if you're actually delivering this for actual end users. Right? It needs to be functional. It needs to be able to all the things that you said you were going to build. It should be represented as a graphical user in some fashion. It can all fit in a single page or a single screen. That would be totally fine. You don't need to do any fancy navigation between multiple screens and none of that. It could be just one single big screen, and it updates dynamically as you interact with it. Right? As you remove and update, delete, and whatnot, it updates and you see the response right away. Right? Having said that, it needs to be able to support the following requirements. Whatever user interface you do choose, you have to have a way for a person to be able to identify themselves. Who am I? Right? And a way for me to add myself to the system. Right? And identify my role. I need to say I am a faculty, I am a student. Obviously, in the real world, faculties would not be able to register themselves as faculty. Somebody would have to come and anoint somebody as being a faculty. Right? We're not going to get into those issues here. Right? Somebody can just choose their role. Right? I am a buyer. I am a seller. I am whatever. Right? I am a doctor. I'm a patient. I am. The only intent here is that based on that role, it drives the rest of the logic on what it is that you can do as you interact with the application. Also, once you've logged in or registered with the system, there will be some profile where it allows you to edit any information about yourself, including the role. Meaning, I'm a faculty, I can change it to student. If I'm a student, I can change it to faculty. Again, right, in real life, you would not be allowed to do that. Perhaps only an admin user could do this with the right authorization. We don't care about that. Right? It's only as a means of testing whether your role logic works, right? And all the relationships work. You need to be able to provide some kind of mechanism for me to be able to query your database, right? If it's FDA, Food and Drug Administration database, I need to be able to search all types of food. Okay, if it's FCC or FAA, or if it's FAA, I need to be able to search for flights, or when space is going to send the next rocket up. Right? I need to be able to search whatever database it is that you're using. And you need to provide me some drop downs or fields for me to type in. Right? Your database should be representative of whatever domain it is that you chose. Okay? It should be either some third-party remote API that you're hitting dynamically, or some database that you've downloaded and imported into your own database. But it should be substantial. It should have enough information that if I search for something random, it should give me some meaningful information. Obviously, within the domain of interest. Make sense? Right? It needs. It shouldn't be that you have so few records that whatever I search, I just get a blank result. It doesn't match. So it should have enough information that it should sustain random searches. When I search, I should be able to then see the results of some summary of the results that come back from whatever database you're using, and then I should be able to do additional queries that are more specific for a particular instance of that data set. Right? So if it's a record, a list of how many flights are going on today, I should come up with a tabular list of whatever 600 flights are currently flying right now, and I should be able to maybe select one of those flights, and it should give me more information about that flight. Right? Was it on time? When did it leave? When is it going to arrive? Whatever. Okay. It should allow me to see more details about any one specific piece of information. So there should be some kind of details screen, that if I choose any one of those of the results, it would give me more information about that one particular detail. Also, here's an example of where you might find some data information. If you go to programmableweb.com, that's a website that provides all sorts of data sets for all sorts of domains. Right? So you can search there your favorite domain, and it'll give you lists of different websites that provide free. Well, some of them are paid for pay. Don't choose anything that's for pay. There's always some kind of free data. Right? The data might have some restrictions. Right? That it might be delayed. Right? Or it might only allow you so many queries per day. It might give you some restrictions, right? That if you query too much per day, right, at the end, it will stop answering. Right? So there might be some restriction, but it's fine. For our purposes, it's totally fine. It should provide some user management for the admin to be able to manage their users, and some deliverables. Obviously, we'll expect some UML class diagrams that show cardinality, all the modeling, the many-to-many, the one-to-many, all the relationships. Here are some tools that you might want to use, some free tools for drawing UML class diagrams. I particularly like visual paradigm. They have tons and tons of tools for developers. One of the free tools is to draw UML class diagrams. They can be embedded or incorporated in other IDEs, like you can connect it to your Eclipse or your IntelliJ to do round robin reverse engineering. Like for instance, you can point to a database, you can give it a UML diagram, right, and then you generate a Java schema, right, that matches the relational database, which is pretty cool. Or vice versa, you can come up with a Java data model, press a button, and then it generates the MySQL schema for you, and vice versa, which is pretty cool. Anyway, that's for pay. But their free tools is allows you to just draw UML class diagrams fairly sophisticated. Some ideas on what the class diagram should include. Okay. This must be hosted somewhere on your favorite application. Somehow the TAs and myself should be able to go to either GitHub and download all your source code, and it should have instructions on how to build and run this locally. Right? If it's a desktop application. Right? If it's a web application, then it should have it should maybe be hosted somewhere, maybe on Heroku or AWS or somewhere I can go and use it. Okay? If it's a split architecture where you're hosting the database remotely on some system, but then you have like a desktop application, then we need instructions on how to build your front end locally on our machines, and then how to connect to your remote data server wherever you're hosting it. So whatever it is you need to, the deliverable will be some GitHub repository where you have everything. It might be that you need several GitHub repositories. Maybe one for the front end, where you keep your mobile and your desktop front end, and some other GitHub repository where you probably have all your server and your middle tier and whatever. You need to tell us, right, that what are the repositories that we need to download everything and install it and run it. Okay? At the end of the semester, we'll ask you to fill out a form where we'll ask you to create certain standard users with their own with a standard username and a standard password. Okay, like Alice, Bob, Charlie, Dan. So you create several users, right? Where Alice is an admin, Bob is user role 1, Charlie is user role 2. If you have more roles, then you can use Dan, Frank, whatever, and create more roles if you have them. And the idea is that you're going to use these users and create dummy data for us, so that when we log in as these users, we see actual people who have been using this, right? And we're going to ask you to provide step-by-step instructions for us, for the TAs, where you tell us how do we validate that you have a user-to-user relationship? How do we validate that you have a one-to-many relationship? How do we validate your generalization? How do we validate your one-to-one? We'll ask you to give us step-by-step instructions. Do here, navigate here, now click there. This demonstrates that we have implemented many-to-many. Here's your actor, and here's your movie. Right? Notice that the actor is acting in many movies. Now go to the movies. Notice that in the movie you have many actors. That validates that there's a many-to-many relationship. Yes? Right, so we'll ask you step-by-step instructions on how to validate that you've met all the requirements. Okay? The case of myself will follow your instructions verbatim. Okay? We're not going to try and break your application. We'll follow your instructions. So the more specific you are, the better chances are that you get full credit for what it is that you did implement. Okay. We will, after verifying that you've implemented all the requirements, we will go back and forth and do some random testing just to see that that's not fake, right? That it dynamically updates and things do actually work as intended, but it'll be fairly random and ad hoc. right? Where we're just going to peruse here and there. We're not going to deliberately try to break the application, but it should survive some light functional testing. Okay. What else? Again, it's a team. It's a team effort. Larger teams are harder to manage. So I'm warning you about this, and would suggest smaller teams. All right, excellent. Thank you. Any questions? This is available on Blackboard. If you go into assignments towards the bottom, you'll see project requirements, and it's a link to this document. Right? And feel free to get started right away.